Okay, so let's continue our learning of Lecha Dodi, trying to delve deeper into the inner meanings. Tables are a bit shaky. To the inner meaning of this very special piyut, this very special poem that we say on Friday nights. And we're up to Lo Seivoshi v'lo Kalmi. This is the second part of Lecha Dodi. Generally speaking, here we begin to sing the faster melody. Things pick up speed. We discussed that in the inaugural shiur for this segment of our Raza de Shabbos Chabura, trying to learn the deeper meanings of Shabbos. And it has to do with not feeling embarrassed. Lo Seivoshi. Not to feel embarrassed, v'lo Kalmi, not to be ashamed. And this comes from a pasuk, from a verse in Yeshayahu and Isaiah. Al tir'i ki lo seivoshi. Don't be afraid, because you will not be shamed. Ve'al tikolmi. And don't fear disgrace, ki lo sachbiri, because you will not be embarrassed. So Rav Kluger writes the following, and we would like to dedicate the shiur Le'ila Nishmas Netanel ben Shimon. The Neshama should have an aliyah. We would like in this discourse to explain the deeper meanings of these words that are part of the poem of Lecha Dodi. Lo Seivoshi, don't be embarrassed. Again, Lo Kalmi, don't be ashamed. Why should you feel so pushed down, bent over? Umatahemi. I think now that's the alarm. It went from bad to worse. But I think that if you just press the thing, it'll buzz them in. Amazing. Thank you. If it doesn't work yet, somebody might have to run down. Okay. Right. Why should we feel so pushed down, bent over matahemi? Why should we mourn and moan? Keep it pashtus on a simple level. These words are consolation to our nation. That there should theoretically be some space, a premise for a person to be feeling shame for the very fact of redemption. When a person isn't in a state to feel like they deserve, like they're ready to enter into like a completely different reality of this world. That it's very likely that Mashiach will come, that the world will be redeemed when there are those of us, and in a way all of us, that are not fitting for that. Because this is the state of the Shekhinah when it's still extricated into physicality. The presence of the divine is pushed down, dragged down into our own ignorance. But there's even a deeper understanding. This stanza, Miyusar al Pasuk b'Navi Yeshaya, is rooted in the prophet Isaiah, the Navi Yeshayahu. Oh, so great to see you. Thank you so much for coming. Al tir'i ki lo seivoshi. Don't be afraid. Ki lo seivoshi. We're in the beginning of the second paragraph. Yeah, you want to point for him where it is? Right at the beginning. V'al tichlemi, we already said, v'al tikolmi, do not fear disgrace. Ki lo sachbiri. Ki boishes alumecha tishkechi. Because you shall forget the embarrassment, the shame of your youth. V'cherpas almanoisayach lo tiskri oid. And the shame of your widowed state, like Tiskri, you won't remember anymore. This pasuk, which is of course the source for the words that show up in Lecha Dodi that are very similar, come from the haftarah of Rani Akara Lo Yolda, Mi'ashiva Denechemta. This passage of Rani Akara, of Am Yisrael rejoicing at the time of the Geula, Perish HaRadak, and the Radak explains, what's this whole thing? Don't be embarrassed. What are we talking about? Why is there space here at the time of redemption for shame, for embarrassment? Perish HaRadak, Ki lo seivoshi, lo olam achar shetetz'i mizeh hagalos. When a person is going to leave exile, lo yisiyah lecha tzara lo olam, you should know that this is for real. This is lasting. Because the minute that a person attains a very lofty level, there's always going to be the niggling doubt in the back of their mind that maybe it's not going to last. And maybe this is actually a setup for an even greater disgrace. Because once a person rises to a very prominent level, and then afterwards they get embarrassed and they're in public office, and all of a sudden the whole world knows, etc. So Seivoshi Kalim, it turns out that their elevation to prominence was actually setting the stage for a tremendous degree of shame. And this is the way that it works in this world. That a person that was prior was a very wealthy person. But afterwards, something goes south, something goes wrong, and he goes bankrupt because just so much debt. Even if he begins ksas a little bit l'shtakem to recover, but there's such a deep, deep pain in his heart. Ad kedei, to the extent there's a concept in the laws of charity and Hilchos Tzedakah that a person is giving money to a person that was formerly of great wealthy stature and then lost all of his money. He's an ani ben tovim. You have to give him not just a little bit of money that he should get by. We have to give him charity that's in accordance with what he's used to, because it's so painful for such a person to endure the shame of now having to experience something radically different. As the Gemara in Ksubis tells us, that we need to give that person tzedakah, charity, on the level that he is used to when he was a wealthy man. So imagine when a person starts to see that he's recovering. Imagine a person, the stocks start going up and, a couple of big deals come through and his contacts are reconnecting, etc., etc. Something's moving, but that person is not calm anymore. That person is, I think we call it PTSD. Now that person's dealing with the trauma of the possibility that this can happen again. Because he remembers very, very deeply what that felt like when all of a sudden this happens to people. From one day to the next, all the portfolios just completely fail and the stock market crashes. And the standard of living that a person has gotten used to, and maybe even more painfully has gotten his or her family used to, with their standards of living, and you have to tell your kids all of a sudden that we can't actually take that holiday because, and that's very painful. He's constantly thinking to himself, okay, I'm starting to recover financially a bit, but what happens if this happens again? Because once a person falls one time, that person loses self-confidence, self-worth. Now, in order to make that person happy again, in order to help that person live a life of calm and of confidence, you have to pour words. The word harif, right, is to shower upon that person words of consolation, words of strength, of chizuk, of calming that person, consoling that person. And that's what's happening in this pasuk, in this verse. That's the source for the stanza that we say Friday night. What does it really mean? What is Yeshayahu Hanavi saying, paraphrasing the Master of Heaven and Earth? What's happening? Al tiri ki loisi v'al tikol mi ki loisi achpiri. These words, don't be ashamed. Don't fear being ashamed. Don't fear being disgraced, because you shall not be embarrassed. Imagine that. All of a sudden the Geula comes, and us with our Jewish anxiety are still not happy. Because we're so afraid that, okay, right now, Mashiach's taking us back to Eretz Yisrael, we could lose it again. We can lose it again. Whose heart is not trembling at the thought of losing Eretz Yisrael again, chas v'shalom? Like that's chas v'shalom, al tiftach pele satan. Who guaranteed us that this time would be forever and ever and ever? A Navi told us that this is kibbutz galuyos, or many tzaddikim that believed that, many tzaddikim that didn't believe that, many tzaddikim that believed that. But there's a fear there. So we get comfortable. This is our new reality. We have a state. Do we always have a state? We sure hope so. But there's a fear. So these words, hi al charada me etzem hageula, are trembling over the fact of being redeemed. Mipnei agalus hachayzeres v'nishnis, because we have no intention of going back into exile. After the Jewish nation experienced the splendor and the glory of the Holy Temple, we experienced what that felt like to witness daily miracles every single day, a place where a person is able to go and get recalibrated, a place where a person can get healed, cleansed. Yom Kippur, we have to remember what our Yom Kippur is today is a caricature of what Yom Kippur was. Yom Kippur, we just stood and we watched everything that we say in Musaf, all Avodah the Kohanim. That wasn't liturgy, that was something that was done, it was performed, we witnessed, and we saw with our own eyes that string of red turning to white. It was very serious. It was clear there's a God in the world who has a relationship with us. And that now there's an energy of, imagine the joy that Matzah Yom Kippur. For us, we feel happy because, we go through the whole Yom Kippur. Usually we're happy because now we can eat some ragalach, and drink some orange juice. So maybe that's why, partially why we're so happy. But on a deeper level, we feel cleansed. And the Torah, just parenthetically from the Belzer Rebbe, as to why in Mariv of Yom Kippur, I've said this in the past, we still say Slach Lanu. We're still asking for forgiveness. Like you just went through the whole Yom Kippur. What do you need to say Slach Lanu for right after Mariv? What did you already do? Okay, maybe we didn't make the bracha, but that's after Mariv. Something. So what could we have possibly done? Says the was the Chedush Yarim, I think, one of the tzaddikim. Yeah. So I think he says that we have to say Slach Lanu because there's a part of us that doesn't really believe that Yom Kippur actually worked. Because it's impossible for the person, without being privy to the objective string, turning from red to white, seeing it like a clear sign, there's always this uncertainty. And Yom Kippur does work. And so we do tshuva for not really believing it. That's what he says, very deep. So when the Beis HaMikdash stood b'tifartim, Aron, the Kruvim, with the Aron and the Kruvim facing each other with the deepest love and intimacy, v'ashras hashchina, the presence of the divine in the Jewish nation, ba'ofen hanirav hanigla, in a way that was absolutely revealed and experiential. And v'achar yardu legalus, and we lost it all. Mistater b'libam pachad. In our hearts was hidden away a terrible terror, a terrible fear. Hamaskala bebusho chlima, which reveals itself in a kind of shame, in a kind of embarrassment. Maybe now, thanks for coming, maybe now, once we've experienced the light of the redemption, yashuvu li megalus. What happens if we go back now into exile and we lose it all? This is the pain of the Jewish nation, the afflicted one, tossed by the storm, not comforted. But Hashem Yisbarach, but the infinite one, the creator of heaven and earth. The verse tells us, the pasuk says, that Hashem experiences the pain that we experience. Hashem feels what we feel. Hashem suffers along with us. Hashem feels this pain. Hashem feels this doubt. Hashem feels this shaken sense of self. And Hashem consoles us. And He says through the prophet Isaiah, through Yeshayahu Hanavi, Al tir'i ki lo Seivoshi. No. You don't have to worry, because this time it's for real. This time it's forever. There's no need for you to worry any more about any subsequent exile. Because your eternal salvation has arrived. And so this is the completion of consolation. Because again, if all we get is consolation, that no, we will go into Gula, we'll get out of Gullus and we'll go into Geula, then it's a beautiful consolation, but it's incomplete. Because there's still, again, this niggling doubt in our hearts that maybe it's not for real, maybe it's not forever. And so this verse, this pasuk, is the cherry on the top, is the ultimate completion of the consolation, to let us know that it's real, it's forever, it's real. Zuhi shleimus hanachama she'in lamala mimenu. That's the highest form of consolation. And the verse continues, Va'al tikol mi ki lo sachbiri. Don't fear being disgraced, because you will not be embarrassed. And you don't have to care what other people think and what other people's intentions are. As the Malbim explains, that the shame is what a person feels. And this word klima, which is another form of the word ashamed or embarrassed, is what other people are embarrassing us. So we're going to be good. We're going to be good. Completely. From inside, from outside. And what incredible hashgacha, what incredible divine guidance that we happen to be learning this just now. Because take a look at the next segment, is all about the Shiva de Nechemta, these 7 haftorahs that we read from the Navi, from the prophets, after the Torah reading on Shabbos. Following Tisha B'Av for 7 subsequent weeks, we read these 7 very special haftorahs that are all about consolation. And he's going to speak about how they extend even into Chodesh Elul, which is literally where we're at now. And he brings Raya L'Davar. He says, I want to prove this to you. To understand how deep and difficult this consolation is. How hard it is to console a person who is in a good place and fell and has their confidence shaken. This is the way that Hashem has arranged the Seder of Haftorahs, and right through Chazal, after Tisha B'Av. We call them, again, the Shiva de Nechemta, 7 weeks of consolation. We know that there are 3 very harsh haftorahs that quote from the prophets describing what's going to be the ensuing destruction of the temple of the Beis HaMikdash that we read in the weeks before Tisha B'Av. So you would think, good, they'll balance it out. They'll have 3 before, they'll have 3 after. He says, no, 3 would not be enough. 3 would not be enough. And we continue with this attempt to console the Jewish nation. It's really where we're at now, which is so incredible that we just so happen to be learning this part of the Sefer at this time in this way.
This week's after.
What, Rani Akara? Yeah, Alti call me. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Baruch Hashem, it's a kiss from Hashem. We're on the right path together. Even into the month of Elul. It's like we moved on from Tisha B'Av. We're already looking forward. We're looking forward to Rosh Hashanah, and that's Yom Kippur, and the 4 days, and then Sukkot with the Dalet Minim and Simchas Torah and the whole thing. But ve'ema speaking b'hem. But it's not enough. Erev Rosh Chodesh, Achal b'Shabbos says, Halacha tells us that even if Shabbos should fall out of Rosh Chodesh, Erev Rosh Chodesh, it doesn't matter. The Haftarah remains the same. It pushes away every other lack of ordinary Haftarah that we would otherwise read, that would push away the regular Haftarah of that Shabbos. We'd read the Haftarah for Rosh Chodesh. Nothing can budge these special passages of consolation. And the reason for this is until Tisha B'Av Yoshvim, we sit and we mourn and we long and we feel pain over the state of the world, that the world is broken. Because the destruction of the temple is not just the destruction of a building. It means that there's a fundamental link between heaven and earth, between spiritual and physical, that's been severed. And that's the result of all the pain in the world. And that hurts. That's the source of all the pain in our lives. That's the source of all the pain in our community, in our nation, in humanity as a whole, in all of existence. And on that day, we look forward that maybe this is going to be the Tisha B'Av about which Chazal described. Tisha B'Av being the birthday of Mashiach. Maybe it's this year. Because believing in the redemption is the greatest form of consolation. When the summer passes, as the Yirmiyahu describes, and we still haven't been saved, and Tisha B'Av passes, and that very night, Matzah Tisha B'Av, and we renew our mourning over the Beis HaMikdash. Hey nefesh Yehudi paretzes bezaka. The soul of the Jew bursts out with a terrible cry. Bezakas ad masai. Until when? How much more of this can we take? How much longer? Ad ki alev mima'in, it should be likabel tanchumim. Until the heart, it's impossible for the heart to receive any words of consolation because the pain is too great. Avikan bahanavi, and here the prophet comes, Menachem ba'ifin ishi, as kol nitke alev become a drachim l'shonei shel kiruv. Here the Nevi'im come and they start to give consolation to every single heart. Atufe tikva v'nechama, with words of kiruv, of drawing close, words that are wrapped in hope and in consolation. V're'ei yisoid hadvarim ba'abu jarham. He says, Mamish, an amazing thing. Take a look, he says, in the Abu Jarham as a Rishon. Shekasav, who writes Levara Seder Hanachamis, to understand this order of this Shiva Denechemta. Because it's not just Stam, it wasn't in order. They set them up in a very specific order because they follow a very specific trajectory. These 7 Haftorahs that we read after the Torah readings of the Shabbosim after Tisha B'Av. And he sets it up like this, so beautiful. That we begin, of course, Shabbos Nachamu right after Tisha B'Av. Hashem sends His prophets to console His nation. On the second Shabbos, Meshiva Knesset Yisrael. It's us answering back. Hashem. We are saying to Hashem, no, it's not doing it for me. It's too painful. I get it. You think, okay, Tisha B'Av is over and it's back to, summer holiday. We say, no, not so fast. This is hurtful. This is painful. Hashem forsook me. Has forgotten me. Because it's not enough to hear the nechama from the prophets. We would like to hear consolation from God Himself. It's the same thing on the third Shabbos. This poor pauper that's caught in a storm, without any consolation. On the third Shabbos, the Navi transmits the words of the nation back to Hashem and says they're not happy, they're not taking it. At a Shabbos Ravius, until the fourth Shabbos Elul, that already shows up in the month of Elul, where Hashem enters, He says, okay, unbelievable. Hashem says, good, it's not enough to hear from the Nevi'im, you're right. I will console you. See, I'm here with you. Not just sending words from afar. Hashem brings consolation into our hearts and into our souls. On the 5th Shabbos, which I believe is our Shabbos, right? The Nevuah continues. Rani akara lo yilada. Shesham muskar pasuk, where in that section is this verse: Al tiri ki loy seivoshi v'al tikolmi ki loy sachpiri ki boishes alumayich tishkechi v'cherpas almanisayich loy tiskri oid. Don't be worried about sinking back into a state of embarrassment, because the geula that will come is the true geula that will last forever and ever and ever and ever, without any tiny little pang of fear in our hearts that maybe this is also temporary. Shabbos Hashishis, on the 6th Shabbos, which is next week, we're ready for the ultimate revelation of Hashem's light. Kumi oiri kiva oirech. We read, Kumi oiri, rise up, shine, kiva oirech, because the light of Hashem is shining in the world. Ad Shabbos Hashviyis, until finally the 7th Shabbos, Shas Kfar Mekabelas Knesset Yisrael Koichos, where we get the strength lahashiv to answer Sais Asis B'Hashem. I can again rejoice in Hashem. The darkness has passed. It's given way to dawn. It's given way to hope. It's given way to a deeper understanding how all this is part of a process with all the pain that appears in the moment to be incomprehensible, but it's within a broader framework. Tagal nafshi be'elikai. My soul will rejoice in my God. After I've heard such words of consolation, after this promise that it's forever, so then we can rejoice. And in the perspective of Panemius, to understand what it is that God is saying. And it's not just, well, before I tried consoling you through the prophets and it didn't work, so now I'm going to be consoling you. It's much deeper. Because he quotes from the Zohar that anoichi, anoichi, this doubling over of a God saying, I will console you. I is hagilui hayoser kavaya, is the greatest revelation of spiritual energy that exists. Says the Zohar, you know what that word anoichi is? Is anoichi misha anoichi. I am what I am. It's the aspect that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what this is. It's impossible for the human being to grasp this. Because ki yesh v'Yehudi tama. Because it's possible for a Jew to be astounded, and shocked. Why should we merit redemption? Are we living in the way that we ought to live? Are we putting in enough energy to work on the things that all of us ought to work on? Ki margish, the person feels that the person is not fitting to experience nechama, to experience consolation in accordance with their behavior. Because the person hasn't changed. And we've stayed the same. And sometimes from there, like there's a tape, I think, with the Kloisenberger Rebbe pleading with Hashem, saying it's not working. If you meant to wake them up with pain, it didn't work. We're still the same. You look back over history, like what did we gain? Really? Are we that much better? So there's been improvements, but are we ready for redemption? Have we learned our lessons? First it was COVID, and then it was this, and then it was the other one, and then October 7th, the whole year that's passed by, are we different? In some ways, sure. But in all the ways that we would have wished that we would have taken this wake-up call and really, really fundamentally changed, I can only speak for myself. It's embarrassing. The answer is no. So what is this nechama? And the answer is, says Hashem, you don't get it. It's not about you. Anoichi, anoichi hu menachemchem. Hashem says right now is revealed a kind of love that transcends conditionality. We do the best that we can to try to fix ourselves, and all of us deal with our challenges, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu understands every person. That's why He's able, says Rabbi Nachman, to judge us on the Yamim Noraim, because the Mishnah says, Al tadanes chavercha ad shetigila mekayma. You can only judge a person when you're in their place, which essentially is another way of saying you can never judge another person, because philosophically you cannot stand in their place, because that's their place. Right? If you were in their place, they wouldn't exist, and you would be them. It's impossible. But says Rabbi Nachman, you know who it is possible for? For Hashem, who is called Mekayma Shel Olam. He is the space of the whole world. So Hashem is in your place, so He could judge. Because when a person is really in the place of another, taking into account their entire background, their entire story, the challenges that they go through, the failures, the yearnings, the wantings, the attempts, etc., the challenges, it's all of it, says Rabbi Nachman, then for sure HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mekayim, have you done as Kol Adam L'Kav Schus. Hashem is judging favorably. Because each of us live in a relative framework, and spirituality is not objective. It's completely subjective vis-a-vis each individual person's framework and circumstances and lives. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, sure, you try your best. And each one of us, again, each and every moment of our lives is tasked with trying to take the next step higher, the next step forward, to work out issues, to try to become greater, to try to become bigger, which means to move beyond our little selves and to start to think more about others, to think about the nation, to think about the world, like we say, to think about the mission, to think about why am I alive in a broader sense? How can I be of service to other people, to Hashem? How can I do what a Jew is supposed to do, to be a priest unto all of existence? But Hashem says ultimately the nechama is a revelation of the love that I feel for you that transcends any of this stuff. Anoichi, anoichi hu menachemchem. Says Hashem, the word nechama he brings over here, Hashem Yisbarach menachamai, lashon chen, comes from the word chen. Chen is grace. Menachem, I know, nun ches nun. Okay, he says is a lashon chen. Shesharshai b'koyach matnas chinam. The word chen means grace, but it also means free, like chinam. It is something that a person just gets. It's a gift. Shenoisin liyehudi, a gift that's given to the Jew. She'adarga shalamala mitam v'das. There's a revelation of that which is beyond our capacity to understand. And the answer is love. Love. Love cannot be understood. Love cannot be explained. If any person, like I say in shiur, is able to explain why they love this particular woman that they've devoted the rest of their lives to, and they bring out a spreadsheet and they start to list all the reasons, and okay, here it is on paper, that's not it. That's not it. It's good. Obviously, there's got to be some conditions, and there should be something founding and guiding a person's connections. But love is something else. Love is what he calls lamala mitam v'das. It's beyond rationality. It's a certain certainty that a person feels that maybe, on the contrary, rationality might not always align with it. Because no person is under the illusion that the particular girl that he happens to be madly in love with is the prettiest girl in the whole world, is the smartest girl in the whole world, is the most perfect girl in the whole world. I mean, even the person that's mamish head over heels with his head, very deep in the sand, is not under that illusion, obviously. But the answer is, it doesn't matter. Because she might not be perfect, but she's perfect for me. Why? Kacha. We spoke with the Hasmo guys this morning. Kacha. Keser kol haksarim. Kacha, right? The will beyond all wills. It just is. Hashem says, I just love this nation. I have to now give reasons and explain why I love them. And now they have to be able to prove that they earned my love. Says Hashem, again, this is a relationship. I can't help myself. I can't help myself. When my kid acts up and he deserves consequence, don't say punishment, consequence, and I can't help myself but just pull him into a huge hug because I love the kid, even though he sometimes can make me a bit crazy. But the love is deeper than that. Anoichi, anoichi hu menachemchem. Ukeseder anachama shala'achar churban abayis kein hu bechol erev Shabbos. Says Rav Kluger, this whole drama of nechama that's supposed to take place after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash as it relates to the Shiva D'Nechemta, which just so happens to be this time of year also, so it's relevant, a dual relevance. But this is not a mimer on the Shiva D'Nechemta. You understand? This is just about Shabbos. Happens to be that punct, it's wild that the Shabbos, the Thursday night that we chose to do this particular piece, because this is where we're up to, is actually speaking about the Haftarah of the Shabbos and Shiva D'Nechemta in Elul. Okay. But that's not what we're speaking about. We're speaking about each and every Shabbos. Because in the works of Pnimius HaTorah, the interiority, the inner light of Torah, the mystical level and aspect of Torah and Chasidus, is that at these moments, Erev Shabbos, Nasa Az Geula L'Nishmas Yisrael, like we learned at length in the previous 2 weeks, there is a tremendous revelation of redemption in the heart and soul of the Jew. Shemaschal Kvar, which already begins, like we learned last week, Be'ez Hamiras Hoidu L'Hashem She'yised Aval Shem Tov HaKadosh Lo'emer Koydem Mincha, that begins with the recitation of this mizmar of Hoidu, like we learned last week, where a person could really break their heart over the week. And a person can cry out to Hashem from that place of exile of all exiles, looking back over the week, wondering, did I really fulfill, everything that I set out? Because that's how it should be. Sunday is a brand new start. The whole week is a microcosm of the year. And so the same way in the beginning of a new year, which is now, we have Elul, and then Rosh Hashanah, etc., Yom Kippur, and we go into the new year with a recalibration. That's how it is with Shabbos and the week. Sunday is not the beginning of the week. Shabbos is the beginning. Shabbos is the reactivation of our intention. So that hopefully when we start Sunday, we go in with a fresh sense of like a really new beginning, super powered by Shabbos, by the cleansing of Shabbos, by the redemption of Shabbos, by the hope of Shabbos, the vision of Shabbos, the clarity, the faith of Shabbos. And then we're supposed to march into the week, and we're supposed to be a vessel for that. So a person comes to the end of the week and they're heartbroken because yet another week and my life is passing by, and life passes by. It's not forever. This is not forever. Life passes. And it's just like, you can't point to the burger that made you fat, not any of you, but a person, me. I can't point to the one burger that's the one that did it. That's not the way life works. It's the accumulation of the passing of burger after burger after burger after burger, and before a person knows it, it gets out of control. And that's how it is with time. 1 week is not going to be the make it or break it, ever. But there has to come a time in a person's life where they wake up and they decide that I want to live higher, I want to live deeper, I want to live bigger. I want to make sure that I really maximize this life in all of its various dimensions, in all of its ways, but not to be stuck like an animal, just chained to the bit, chained to the food in the trough in front of us, swallowing hook, line, and sinker everything that society chooses to tell us, we should spend all of our time in. It's very sad. It's really very sad. And we can break free from it easily. And not only can we break free from it, we must break free from it, because our task is to bring about something new, is to help other people break free from it. So a person comes to the end of the week and they start with the Baal Shem Tov's Haidu, and they're crying. But from that point, we begin to draw our new strength of consolation because of the redemptive spirit of Shabbos, a little bit of a taste of the world to come. A reminder that right now what is being experienced on one day by one nation will soon be experienced on all days by all nations. Shabbos is a taste of the world to come, when everybody will have that experience of calm and of clarity and of peace. Shabbos shalom, lo yisa goy el goy cherev. There will be no more wars. Va'oimrim. And then we say, Lo Seivoshi v'lo Kalmi. So now don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. Mal teshtoichachi, why should you be doubled over? Umatahemi, why should you moan? Ta'ainu shekol hayogan va'anacha shel yimos hachol. All of the crashing, the crying, the sighing, the moaning of during the week, v'nidma legalas hachurban, which again in this context is exile. Exile into the physical constraints of the world. Lo yashav al atzmai. It will not return. Kikfoir Hashem alayich nikla. Because the presence of the divine, the glory of a shining world, the same world, but a world that's illuminated with the presence of the Creator, B'kedushas HaShabbos haba, is about to emerge with the coming day of Shabbos. Shekei mamin b'divrei nechama, because we really believe these words of consolation, says which after requesting it, we've been privileged to hear from the mouth of Hashem Himself, Anochi, Anochi hu menachemchem. Where Hashem says, it's okay. You had a difficult week. Maybe all the weeks are difficult in their way. And Hashem says, I want you to know that it's Shabbos now. It's Shabbos now. And Shabbos, just like the ultimate Geula, is a gift, a matana toiva. It's nechama, chein, chinam. It's free. It's free. The Raditchever says a person has to work to create a vessel for the gift, and in accordance with how much a person understands about Shabbos, which Baruch Hashem we've been learning, many of us very deeply now for 2 years or so. So a person makes a vessel. But says the Berditchever, don't make the mistake of thinking that now because you worked on your avodas Hashem, your service of God during the week, you earn the Shabbos. You cannot earn Shabbos. Nothing a person can ever do makes them, like now they paid the ticket for Shabbos. Shabbos is always a gift. How much we get out of Shabbos is how much work we put in to prepare the vessel. But Shabbos is a gift. And it's the same thing with Olam Haba. It's a gift. It's a gift. It comes down regardless because it's an expression of love, of unconditional love. Anoichi, anoichi hu menachemchem. V'kana makam legas bedavar. We'll go a little bit further. We'll pause. V'kana makam legas bedavar adin v'dak. Now it's time to touch upon a very gentle, a very fine point. Hachavui, that's hidden b'mamake hanefesh, that's really buried very deeply in the souls of the Jewish nation. Sheyesh v'kashar Yehudi shemea dvarim be'inin halas hashchina kadosh b'Shabbos kodesh. A person hears about these ideas, how the Shekhinah is revealed on Shabbos, and everything is different. And the story from with Reb Shlomo, the clouds of the 6 days of the week make way for the clouds of Shabbos, or Aaron of Karlin, I think it was. And the Jew again thinks to himself and wonders, Masmiya bein lebein atzmai. I don't understand. Hey, na'olam kimin hagay na'ig. It's just a day, like all the other days. Why don't I see a cataclysmic shift in nature on Shabbos? Really, why? If everything we learn in all the texts about the nature, the metaphysical reality of Shabbos, how distinct it is from the unit of the 6 days of the week, the sphere of Malchus vis-a-vis the 6 spheres and the Midas, and it's a completely different reality. Why don't we see that? Why don't we experience that? And af b'Shabbos kodesh, even if we're honest with ourselves, on Shabbos, let's be honest, with all the spirituality, akati avdei Achashverosh anan, he quotes the Gemara Megillah, we're still servants of Achashverosh. Like we don't feel really free. And how is there any words that speak about the redemption of Allah's Shechina, which is Knesset Yisrael, the Shechina of Hashem, the indwelling presence of the divine, B'Kabbalas HaShabbos, Oid, Be'edan HaGalus. But again, we're still in exile. And this touches on what we mentioned last week, the same idea. But the truth is, we have to understand that the words are actually real. And they're literal. Shekol Yehudi B'Asher Hu, every single Jew, no matter what's going on with them, Hu Nasa B'Shabbos Kodesh Merkava, we become a chariot on Shabbos by virtue of what the day affords us and our keeping and guarding of this day. We become a chariot ligilui hayichud ben kutzrichu shchinte. That is a reality that takes place in our soul. The unification between Creator and creation. The revelation of the Creator's energy within His creation. That is a thing that happens in our neshama on Shabbos. There is a fundamental, subjective shift within our own perception. And it is a tremendous step forward to the redemption of everything. The true, final, real redemption. Because of Lecha Dodi, and the Lecha Ephraim's comments on what's written in Lecha Dodi, Seivoshi, again, these same words, don't be embarrassed, don't be afraid. Because, like we learn in Kedivra Gemara in the Gemara, that Shabbos enables a person to be completely cleansed of all of the blockages that they've created in their life, shutting godliness out through physicality, egoic focus, sinning. That Shabbos enables a person to be completely forgiven. It's like a mini Yom Kippur each and every week. In a sense, we have the opportunity. The question is whether we take it. The question is whether we're conscious of it. But it's a thing that's happening. And it'll be real in as much as we recognize that it's real and act accordingly. But it's a fact that at that moment in time, we're able to shed the external layers, the dark garments of exile, of an Islabish Yehudi b'malbushe Shabbos, b'bigdei Siferes HaShechina HaKadosha, and a person is rising into wearing the clean, pristine, holy clothing of Shabbos. Umevur, and it's understood, shekedushas HaShabbos, that the holiness of Shabbos, mahapeches es haboishes l'Shabbos. The letters boishes, which in this context refer to a person feeling hopeless, feeling like whatever kind of great redemption might be accessed, we can lose it again. Which means that a person isn't really confident. Shabbos takes that word boshes and flips it around and says Shabbos. Shabbos means to rest, to be calm, to be secure, to be confident. to know that it's forever. Shabbos is a taste of that eternal yichud, of that eternal unification, that revelation. The Isa Geula Asida that we'll experience in full at the time of the final redemption. Ukfar be'es hagalas mesir minishmas Yisrael as boishes hagalas. But it's like, Shabbos comes and you can start to taste it, to feel it. This is the end. This is the end. We're mamish at the end. Mamish. We're coming to the end. And a person feels that in their heart, that even though, we're still in exile, but what I am potentially experiencing in this moment is ultimately real, because it's a tiny little bit of a hint of a taste of what will always be ultimately real. That I don't have to fear going back into exile. That I don't have to fear ever losing this again. I mean, this is where all of history is headed. And each and every Shabbos brings us one step closer to it. It is part of the eternally, fundamentally real. What about our experience of it? It's on us. It's on us. How do we experience Shabbos? Consciously, not spiritually, subconsciously. What does our Shabbos look like? How do we spend our time on Shabbos afternoon? What do our Shabbos meals look like? What is our davening like? Where do we daven? How do we choose to daven? Etc., etc., etc. And this is how it goes. What we put in is what we get out. But let no person make the mistake of thinking that because in their current experience of Shabbos they don't feel these great cataclysmic lights, that something isn't happening. Because Yom Kippur happens the 10th of Tishrei every year, and there are hundreds of thousands of Jews who don't know that it's Yom Kippur, and they carry on and they go to work, and it's just a regular mundane day. And all of us understand that this is not a regular mundane day, and that something so profound is happening in those souls, that Itzumay Shal Yoyim, according to one Madar of the Gemara, the Rishonim don't hold this way, that Yom Kippur itself is mechaper, even for the people who don't know whatever, just the day. But it has to do with, are we conscious of what's taking place? And that's the goal. It's not simply to carry on along in the structure of things that happen, but to become conscious of them and then to allow them to emerge in our actual thoughts, in our words, in our actions. And everything changes. Everything changes. So that's the blessing that we should, in recognizing what Shabbos is, commit ourselves to opening our minds and hearts to it, to rejoicing with it, to tasting it, so that we can refresh ourselves and then march into the subsequent week with the mindset of Geula, of redemption, of clarity. Thank you so much for